Welcome to Portal to the New Earth. Really honored today to have Kirsten Liegmann join me to share her expertise that I learned about when I was at the Regen World Conference in Austin, Texas back in March. The title of the talk she gave there is Be the Future, Embody the Regenerative Human to Lead and Thrive at the Crossroads of Transformation. So I'm really excited for her to just share her whole background, life story, how she came to be an expert in this field, and then dive into the details of what she does have to offer, which is basically about the human factor in creating and building this new earth. That seems to be the key to the success of any village, community, or thriving society. So great, Kristen. Just dive right in and share your story with us.
Thank you, Harlan. Really appreciate being here. And yeah, I loved meeting you at Regen World and your passion. And so this is really, really wonderful. So yeah, just a little bit of my background is that I have really followed three primary focuses in my life: business, sustainability, or now regeneration, right? And consciousness. Those three have been a really powerful, powerful anchor for me. I was born and raised in Germany, came to come to school here. And I remember in my business undergraduate, they put a sustainability, environmental studies minor. Suddenly offered that. I'm like, gotta do that in my senior year. So I really immediately knew sustainability regeneration was part of my pathway. And then I earned an MBA in sustainable management after that. So regeneration, the whole, and really at the essence of it is a love for the earth, right? It's a deep, deep love for the earth and the pain of seeing how humanity has lived on earth. And is there a better way? And if so, how do we get there? Right. And then I got to meet my now late husband, Rennie Davis. And for those of you who are not old enough to know who he is, he was one of the leaders of the anti-war movement in the 60s and one of the Chicago Seven. So that was a big trial during that time where the government truly tried to shut down the anti-war movement through that. And, as Rennie always would say, the government tried to put us on trial, but we actually put the government on trial. So it was just a powerful, powerful time. But when I met him, so in that time, this is how I started the speech that you heard, but in that time, Rennie used to have an argument with John Lennon. Yep, that John Lennon, right? John and Yoko became involved in the anti-war movement when they realized how messed up it was, right? And they did that bed-in, and that's where Rennie met them during that week, where they were basically in a hotel room in bed trying to bring attention to the anti-war movement. And so they became partners and friends in the anti-war movement. And at that point, the Beatles had gone to India already and had been introduced to the Gandhi philosophy, right? And so here is the argument that Rennie and John used to have. Here's Rennie, put 1 million people on the street so we can change them, we can change the government, we can change the system, right? And John would go, no. We need to change ourselves to change the world. No, we need to put 1 million people on the street. No, we need to change ourselves to change the world, right? Now, when I met Rennie in 2006, I believe, he was fully understanding that the only way we can change anything is to change ourselves. Period. End of sentence. And there's a lot of underlying understandings around that and subtleties and complexities, but ultimately that is the reality. We cannot change anybody else, right? And so he and I ended up co-teaching consciousness workshops, spiritual maturity workshops. And he authored what we call the 13 life principles. And to me, I have used them in my own life. I have taught them. I use them with my clients. And it is, to me, the most powerful and potent stepping stones to becoming, I don't know what we want to call it, new human, new paradigm human, the next level, the next evolutionary step, that authentic self that we are, that we can become. And to me, it is most essential, going back to how you started this. We have the technologies, we have the systems, we have the infrastructure, we have pretty much everything we need to build and live on Earth in harmony with the intelligence of nature, right? I mean, look at the picture behind you, right? I mean, we have the creativity and the beauty and the designs and the, I mean, truly the technologies, they haven't been allowed out that really could change how we live on Earth, right? But we have that piece. What we don't have, Harlan, is the human piece. We are still at the very beginning of our evolutionary journey. We're still mostly asleep and driven by egos and control mechanisms and emotional patterning that cause drama and trauma, and every community experiences it. And so that's what my work, the essence of my work, is: who do we choose to be as representatives of the future we want to bring in? We don't want to bring emotions in. We don't want to bring all the anger and resentment and drama and trauma. Is, we have this belief it's human nature. I call that BS. Emotions are not is not human nature. Feelings are, and we can get into that a little bit, but emotions is not who we are. And we don't want to bring that into the future we want to create. So who do we choose to be right here, right now, as leaders, builders, and designers of the future we want to create? So,
So, would you be appropriate to go through those 13 life principles to share those at this point, or or just some of them, or how you use them? Because you mentioned them, and that seems to be the cornerstone of your work. So, it'd be great to hear what they are.
it is. It probably would take too long to go through all of them in detail,
Yeah, but
but
just to outline
I
them
will,
just briefly.
yeah, I will give you a sense of them. So there are actually 12 life principles, and then the 13th is the mosaic, the weaving of all of them together
Wait,
into a state of being that I call actually inner royalty. It's just a state of being where you show up in the fullness of who you can become. And so I'll speak to a few of them. And what I invite your listeners to really focus on more than the words is the frequency, because that is the underlying piece of this, right? We love to claim to, understand appreciation and gratitude, joy, of course, calm centered, not a problem, open, curious, these are all principles. When you say them just like, oh yeah, of course, not a problem, I can handle, but then life happens, right? Some experience happens, somebody cuts you off in traffic or bumps you or splashes you or whatever, says something that triggers an emotional reaction in you, and all of those go out the window. So we've got to move from just intellectual saying it and claiming we understand that. Like one of my friends says, I don't care what you know, I care whether you embody it. And so this work is an invitation to actually embody who we can become. and bringing that future self into the here right now. And so, principle number one starts right off with the understanding that perception is your only power tool. The only power tool you have in life is how you perceive things, is how you experience your life, no matter the external evidence. And so the principle is called better than you could ever imagine, right? And it's a taking of all of the subconscious and unconscious and conscious perceptions that we hold and basically saying, okay, for right now, I am just gonna zero in on one key perception, better than you could ever imagine, no matter what's going on in life. And I tell you, these last 4 years, 4.5 years, I got to really see, can I walk my talk? I've been teaching this stuff forever, right? And practicing it. Can I walk my talk? And so here's the last 4 years, 4.5 years. 2021, February, Rennie dies, right? Rennie was my beloved. He wasn't supposed to head out yet, right? And it was a sudden, well, somewhat sudden. I took him to the hospital and within 2 weeks he was gone, right?
Oh, that's,
Yeah. I mean, he had been on dialysis for the year before, so I could tell
yeah.
his energy was waning, but they found a 10-inch tumor in his belly at the hospital, right? And so I got to be with him he was at home, he died at home in my arms, and I got to be in the grace of that experience. But then I got to sit in that empty space that he left and go, okay, I teach everybody else, no matter what, this is better than you could ever imagine. Can I walk my talk? Can I take this and actually live better than you could ever imagine? Can I live it? And I would say I'd give myself maybe a B minus, right? I mean, it was hard. Losing a loved one is a
It's
pretty big
huge.
one. Losing a child is probably, even more intense than that is my guess. But yeah, losing a loved one is right up there in terms of challenges, right? And so I got to look at, can I walk my talk better than you could ever imagine? And then later that year, my mother called and, can I move in with you? I need help. And that was almost harder than Rennie passing, right? And all the old stuff and patterns and emotions that come up with that. And
Wow.
and then I got a cancer diagnosis in the beginning of 2024, so a little over a year ago. Can I walk my talk better than you could ever imagine? And calm centered is another one. Can I stay relaxed and in flow with what is showing up? And by that time, I really had practiced, and so I was in bliss, total bliss in the pre-op room. I was in such an expanded place. So I ended up having a hysterectomy, and that took care of everything. I had zero pain coming out, zero pain. So that's principle number one.
Yeah, wow. Backed up with a lot of personal experience in
Yes,
embodying it and utilizing it. And I just want to comment on that principle because a couple of years ago, I met with this really interesting spiritual teacher, and he talked about this concept of your ultimate highest destiny, which is better than you can imagine. I kind of feel like that phrase is similar to that principle of, achieving this ultimate highest destiny that is better than you can imagine. All right,
right.
so keep
But
going with these
yeah,
incredible
but
principles. And
here's the key on that one. We think It's supposed to, highest, best outcome, all that. We only go to what we would consider positive, right? But what is, and this is what with my clients, I love doing this, is I love pulling them out of the myopic micro view of life and what's happening right here, right now, and pulling into macro view. What if having cancer was part of my life design such that I could fully start embodying these principles and actually living them rather than, having them halfway down, right? And that being the better than you could ever imagine. So the key here is the future, and the future is it's better than you could ever imagine, but you don't know exactly what that looks like. So then let me just go over a few of the other principles and how they weave together, right? So if you know that everything is better than you could ever imagine, then all of a sudden now you approach life with open, curious innocence. That is another of the principles, right? There is a curiosity about everything that shows up. You're open to receive, you're open to the magic, you're open to what shows up, right? And so that is like, and the innocence piece is so important. Innocence is the only way where you can get anywhere in the universe. You cannot shove and push and be angry adult anywhere else in the universe. So innocence, that childlike open curiosity is a really, really important state of being. And in all transparency, I am a recovering German. So innocence is definitely something that I am practicing and working on because its innocence is like water around rock, right? Innocence doesn't try to force, it just gently goes around and softly, chips away at the sand particles in the rock, right? So that's another one. And then calm centered, I mentioned earlier, it's this ability to be completely in the center of your body. And the metaphor that I like to use is like a buoy in water. A buoy goes bloop, bloop, right? If there's a wave that comes through and it goes bloop, bloop, and it moves with what shows up, but it never resists and it immediately comes back to center. And it's about being fully relaxed in your body. Other ones are love yourself, love your body, understanding that you're two packages in one. There's you, the awareness, and your body. And you get to be partners in this life. You get to understand that your body has its own evolutionary journey. It's not just a meat sack. It actually has its own consciousness. And you get to engage with that consciousness and make it your best friend while you're working on you, the awareness, loving yourself into existence. Wow. Really powerful.
Yeah, and I just want to say I've been working for since 2019 with this friend Z Earth Star Healer that has this Earth Star Academy. It's kind of a spiritual teaching, but very grounded, very practical. And she stresses though that if she had to just teach one thing, if you had to just learn one thing out of everything, and in the courses she spends is a 2 week section in the course to just work on self positivity or loving yourself. So the fact that that's just one of your principles, but that is one I've learned from her that she stresses as being the key to everything. Like if everyone on planet Earth could just embody and learn that, that alone could, and of course this work is, as you started this whole talk off, instead of going out there actively trying to change the world, it's all just about your own personal and loving yourself is key and is the personal transformation and journey. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that as one because that did even come up in a conversation earlier today. So keep going. But
Yep.
I just wanted to interject that
Yes.
That's a really important one of the principles, at least through what I've learned from, this Earth Star Academy. But yeah, it's something to really be stressed and embodied fully. So thank you.
Nice. And I just want to take a moment to ground this into why this is important and how it will benefit you, the listeners, right, as leaders. These are not just lofty spiritual concepts. I mean, this is about overcoming the blocks and emotional patterns that we've carried for so long, cleaning the field, right? Cleaning the inner field so that you can do the work that you came here to do. I mean, there is, Rennie used to call this the new humanity. There is a group of humans here. No, nobody is better or more anything in that. It's just there's a group of humans called the new humanity that is here on earth to try to do something that almost has been impossible, to make a leap of life, evolutionary speaking, and see if we can change the way humans live on Earth, right? And so, as leaders, designers, builders of that new Earth, as I said earlier, we've got to represent that. But what it will do is it will make you seen and heard, right? I mean, a lot of us, and I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but maybe you felt a little like the oddball out when you were growing up, sort of a little not quite fitting in, maybe lonely, maybe, not quite like something is off with me. You came in with this life plan, right? And you needed to set yourself up to be open to something new and different. So, what this work does is it brings you into the position of the leader that is heard, seen, understood, respected, and you can actually have the impact that you want to make. And, it's this is really about having it all. Right. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we'll say, okay, I'll 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 do the health thing. I'll be well and healthy and eat well, but the money thing is not quite there, right? I don't have financial abundance or my relationships are not quite right. This is the invitation to say you can have it all. This work of bringing yourself into this authentic self, inner royalty state of being, will change everything in your life. Period. End of sentence. Because of the energy with which you show up, the frequency with which you show up, and how others will respond to you, how you respond to what the universe brings, the divine breadcrumbs, the delights, and how to just be in flow with life. So this is really not just airy-fairy spiritual, mumbo jumbo or fluffy bunny stuff, right? This is about how can we thrive, right? My title was Lead and Thrive at the Crossroads of Evolution or Transformation, right? We're at a crossroads right now, and we get to make a choice as humans. Every single human has to make this choice. This is not about, we're about to be whisked into the fifth dimension automatically, and everybody's going to be going on to this new plane of existence and all that. I hate to say it, but this is the only law in this reality is the law of free will. You must choose. And once you make the choice, then the stepping stones are there. And, there's other ways, but to me, the 13 life principles have been the most precise and effective stepping stones to having it all, having a life that actually works.
And like you say, we get to choose, but a lot of times we don't know what those choices are. So what you're presenting with this work are really positive, viable choices that we can then embody. So, that's what's, I think is so great about what you're doing and what we're sharing today is having this vision of, the choice of a really positive choice and to understand. And like you were saying, though, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to fully embody that,
Yes.
and whatever path that takes to fully embody it. So, yeah, if you have
Yeah.
any, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the next step is. I know you can't go through every single one of the 13, but just the general idea of this idea that we have free will and to be making this choice is
Yeah. And
important.
that's really a big key. And let's go into that. And you said people have a hard time making a choice, right? And one of the things that I see often with my clients is what I call purpose paralysis, right? It's like, I'm here to do something really, really big. I know it, I know it, I know it. I'm supposed to do something important, but I don't know what it is, right? And then they get into this loop of what if I choose the wrong purpose? What if it's not what I'm supposed to do? And there's this sense of something external of them telling them what they're supposed to be doing, right? Some divine God, universe somehow imposing, and I put that in quotation marks, this life purpose. When in fact, number one, the only life purpose you have is to embody love, life, and joy. It's the only life purpose you have because guess what? Right now on earth, in this reality, fear, which is the, binary reality balance to life. So there's life and then there's fear. Right now, fear so outweighs life. I mean, there is literally only a tiny little sliver of life left energetically in this reality. And so, really, our most important thing that we can do to change this world and help it through this transition is to become life, to become love. And I'm talking big L. I'm not talking, human love. I'm talking like the authentic self-love and joy as the highest frequencies you can get into this in this reality. If we can simply pull that through us, embody it, and then send it back out into the world, you will have had the impact you wanted to come have. And then once you are there, then you get to live out your purpose. Passion is one of the life principles. It's the quiet fire of life. It's the fuel, the life force that then you get to play in this incredible thing we call the world, and you get to express however you want. But it's not your identity. Your identity is your authentic self. It's your inner royalty. It's love, life, joy. And then you get to express purpose and your life, put your life force into something in a fear-free way. Another principle, fear being, misunderstanding, right? Because it's better than you could ever imagine, and you're calm centered and open curious, right? It weaves together into this mosaic of the human being that you can become that is absolutely magnetic and inspiring and impactful when you can walk this. But it takes some steps, and the commitment is number one. Choice, commitment, right? You have to say, there might be things that I don't quite understand yet. Spiritual humility to me is like the underlying thing of everything. I find it challenging when I hear people say, "Oh, but we're so evolved already. We're almost enlightened. We're almost awakened." I hate to say it, but when you're in your brain thinking 23/7, you're mostly asleep still being in your brain is mostly asleep. And this species at this time, we're early on. I call us infinite beings in diapers. That's what we are. And when we get to understand that, then we get to understand we don't know everything yet. We don't know. And the things we have interpreted from our reality and the things, what we call human nature and all of the maybe that's not quite the way it is. And there might be other ways to understand it. And so this body of work is just another way of expanding our understanding and expanding who we can become. And it's just another stepping stone on our infinite journey. Who knows what comes after that? But I can just imagine it being amazing.
Right. It's true that, we get caught in the mind, we get caught in our egos, and we think we know so much, but that is really important that we're really just on the threshold. And like you say, to awakening to what this new way of being is. And I guess relaxing into it, being humble, things along those lines, which are difficult though, because when, especially, you're working with people that want to be leaders in this movement. So that takes a lot of being in your mind, being in your ego. And so to be able to shift and follow these principles, I think, and make it things work, like it really does seem, I've been studying intentional communities, for many, many years. And it seems like the one, stumbling block for all of them is the interpersonal relationship and how
Yeah.
to work on that aspect, which is why, what you're focusing on and working on seems to be the real key for us to be able to succeed and move ahead. So wondering, what other, practical
Yeah.
ways of embodying what you're doing or other things you could share that, and also, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good enough question to keep you going here with what you have to offer.
Yeah, I just want to go back to something you just said and kind of tweak that a little bit. You said, being in the work of, building and designing the new world requires you to be in your brain and in your egos. That is a misunderstanding, absolutely. And so there's a couple little pieces that tie into another of the principles, which is called check egos, or what I'd like to call being objective, emotionally objective. And that is the understanding that egos are not who you are. And notice I'm making it plural. Most people from, old psychology believe there's just one ego, right? And somehow we got to live with it. That's a misunderstanding, and there's a new, and I'm going to pose it as a hypothesis so people can test it themselves. And, I want to say this, everything I say, try it for yourself, right? Don't take my word for it. Try and see if it actually changes how you show up in the world and whether you're more alive and whether you're more focused and whether you're more confident. Try it and see. But check egos is a really, really important part of that. So again, egos are not who you are. They have been created in order to handle situations we couldn't at our sleeps state of being, right? Something had to run this ship called you, right? Something had to be there. Authentic self can't be here yet. Body chemistry doesn't allow that. It can't live in adrenaline and cortisol and all the body chemistry of fear that we put up, right? So something had to be on that in that cockpit. So the psyche creates egos to handle that, right? And so here's this ego handling the situation. Now, the original design was flush it out of the system once it's done with its job. Well, over the evolutionary process, egos became permanent. They suddenly was like, we like it in here, we're going to stay, right? And then in the process, they started believing that they are who you are in your anger, in your judgment, in your irritation. This is our self-image. And then you started believing these egos were who you are, right? And so now you're wearing this mantle of a residual self that is not you. It isn't. And the way you find them is through your emotional reactions. Anytime you have an emotional reaction of any kind, you know it's an ego, and that ego is not who you are. Period. End of sentence. And now you have the steps to go, okay, if that's not who I am, how do I now release them? And it's the notice and observe. Notice it, become a master at self-observation, and then releasing it. And there's steps to that, and I teach that, in depth. This is such a key to cleaning the internal field. And you can get, I mean, I used to, in my first husband, he used to be an angry man, right? He was an angry man. I used to cry during our fights, and he would go, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." I was so unable to self-observe myself and know what's going on that I would cry, not know why I'm crying, right? So I have honed the ability to literally tend to my inner field so intently that I know when there's a tweak. Even if it's in my little toe and there's a tweak of like an emotional reaction in my little toe, I am on it because I know how this works and I know how I want my field to feel. And I do the same thing in my relationships. There's a field between people, and I am a tender of that field. And the agreement that I have with my sweetheart is anytime there's a tweak between us, even if it's the tiniest little thing, let's tend to it because we can clean the field because my commitment is to keeping those fields clean, right? And so check egos is this incredible way of cleaning the field. And, really honestly, some people have so much trauma still from their early childhood that that field is full of, exploded landmines and craters of trauma that needs to be healed in some way first, right? Through, therapies that are more focused in on trauma. But once there is the trauma is no longer intense and the holes are more or less filled, then we get to become the real fine-tuned tenders of this field. And we do not allow any tweak, irritation, no more, judgment, no more. And the one that's right behind those, righteousness. Ronnie Righteous Ego, one of the most insidious. No more. Anger with emotion, no more. Right? Melancholy, fear, anxiety, worry. They don't belong on this field anymore. Now, do they still show up? Sure, they still show up, but it's like martial arts. You just keep practicing and keep practicing and keep practicing to keep that field clean. And guess what? When that field is clean, do you think you're more impactful in the world? When you're not emotionally reactive to everything that your partner, your family, your politicians, your president says? When you have zero reaction, when you're completely objective emotionally, you can be so much more powerful and impactful. And that's when we'll supercharge creating the world we want to create with those fields clean, right? What if we created educational systems, regenerative living systems, wellness systems, infrastructure, where we tend to the field first? It's all energy. And this is how we do it. So,
That is great. I know I want to embody and learn and these principles because that makes so much sense. And the way that calling it the field, which and the energy, the vibrational frequency, is that really is such a key. And you mentioned, you have these clients. So do you have? We'll put in the information with this video links to your website and stuff. But if you just want to talk about how you do this work, what how I can access you and this work more. So yeah, this is really great. So you can talk about that, and we'll put that in the information.
yeah, so there's a website called Ilian Leadership Academy. Ilian being the metaphor for a new nation on earth and the name for that new nation, Ilian. And there's a whole story around that I will not talk to right now, but how Rennie and I found that word. We didn't create it, we found it, and I knew we needed to find it. So, and yeah, you can see there's a link on that web page to book a free call with me. I mean, if you just want to run something by me and it's like, okay, here's a tweak in my field. Can you support me? So, and then of course, there's exploration on how we could work together. I do one-on-one coaching. I'm a CEO mentor and a coach for, world changers, change agents, people who want to design, build, and lead a new earth. And I love doing it. I love cultivating this next generation of leadership. So, if you feel any inkling that you're part of that new humanity that is here to bring that in, I truly invite you to book a call with me and just have a chat and see, and I will be getting ready to do a year-long mastermind with a very, very hand-picked 12 people max that I get to do like almost like a Jedi training for these leaders, And so that will be coming later in the fall, but for right now, what I do is one-on-one coaching.
Great. Well, I'm so glad you were able to join me today and share all this great information. So, please check out her website. And of course, with the portal to the new earth, please, like and subscribe to help this channel grow. Share this video if you feel like other people would benefit from it. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Kirsten. And thank you all for joining us today to watch this video. And until the next portal to the new earth, we'll see you then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. So appreciate it.